Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Game Detectives podcast. Every episode we're going to talk about a game or a game series, what we like, what we don't, as well as some lessons we can take away from the game. We hope you enjoy this episode. Hey everybody, this is another episode of the Game Detectives podcast. Today we will be talking about Pokemon Sword and Shield and all of the craziness that is happening in it and kind of how bad it is. So joining me today are Eli Baumgartner and Elijah Cusack Wood. And let's get right into it because Eli's got to go to the grocery store, so...
I don't know if it's on purpose, Eli, but like the way your picture looks, it looks like you're a giant person in a small house. It just looks like the ceiling is a lot closer to the ground and that you're the same height as the wall. It looks cool. It really looks cool.
All right.
I'm not trying to be weird or mean about it. It just looks like you're.
No, he's trying to be mean. He's trying to.
What's
right.
the opposite of honey? We shrunk ourselves.
Honey, I blew up the kid.
Oh yeah, honey.
Yes, you blew
we
up.
blew up ourselves.
There's a movie like that.
Well, it's called Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, where the kid gets big.
Yes.
It's not very well known. I don't know why, but it's like the second one.
It's pretty impressive the amount of spin-offs that they've had about all those.
It doesn't have Steve Guttenberg, so that's all you need to know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, Pokemon, they're coming out with the DLC soon. I think it's coming out in June. So this episode may or may not come out before then, but it seems like a good time to talk about Sword and Shield. So, before we rip into it, which I am looking forward to, I want to know what your guys' like favorite new Pokemon are that came out this time around.
New Pokemon. So I've got my Switch in my hands right now. I'll pull out the Pokedex.
Fancy!
It's literally that's how forgettable. Like
I like a lot of the Pokemon.
I actually agree with David. I thought if anything was good in this series, it was the new designs. I honestly thought like they were promising, and I think that's why so many of us are disappointed because it seems like they had great art and they didn't utilize it.
Yeah, so like I literally just have like the Pokedex like listed with all the pictures. I really like Pokemon. Like I love Wooloo. Obviously, it's great. Mm-hmm. But like the ladybug that's also a UFO, which is
okay. That one's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like Corviknight and Corva and like that whole line too.
Yeah,
I think Greedent is cool.
I like Corviknight a lot.
Like I think there's some stinkers too. Like Colossal looks. I'm not a big fan of, and like. I think a lot of the new Pokemon are, like, actually pretty good, or pretty cool looking.
Yeah, they're not bad, actually.
I don't like Q-Fant.
I love Cutefant, and I love the one it turns into. That was actually one I loved.
Copper Raja?
Yeah! I like to call it Cap Elijah.
Oh.
I always thought I actually really like that design, personally.
I think, like, overall the designs are pretty good, and I would say, like, overall in the last two generations, I think the designs were actually pretty good. I mean, like, I feel like designs are always good where like people when they first see them are like, oh, this looks ugly, this is gross, but then they start playing it and then they like it.
Yeah,
like I really didn't like the fossil Pokemon at all, and then it's like, oh, I started playing it and then I'm like, oh, it looks cool.
Sorry, I still hate them.
I like the electric chicken ones. Those are fun.
The electric chicken ones.
Yeah, the ones where it's like where it has like the head of Arcto.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I'm sorry. We're like getting the ball rolling. Like it's the morning for me. I'm like kind of tired. Okay, yeah, I remember all this now, and I'm kind of regretting saying that.
You're eating your words.
I am eating my words because yeah.
Corviknight.
Right, I am. I'm literally like because I'm like, oh wait, that is actually a good part of the game. There's just so many parts that I didn't like that is like, clouded.
I was gonna say I like what they did with the new like Galarian forms too. Like I really like Cursola. Like that's cool that it's like that it's like, oh, coral reefs are dying, so let's make it a ghost type.
Yeah.
I like the Surfetched. Like, I like a lot of those guys. Mr. Rhyme is cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mr. Rhyme is awesome just because of the Charlie Chaplin stuff for sure. Like I thought that was a cool nod.
I think the strongest part of and I think it's kind of easy to be the strongest part of these games, but I think the strongest part are the designs. And like just the different play styles you can do with these Pokemon too.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that Yamper had a really cool special ability where if you threw a Pokeball and it didn't work out, it could go fetch it and then bring it back to you. I thought that was kind of fun.
It was
personally.
cute. And they also had like a lot of cool new abilities where it's like Mr. Mime now has like an ability where that makes more sense with him, where it's like if you bring him into battle, he can like take away reflector light screen for the other team, which like makes sense because he's Mr. Mime and like he does like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I like some of the new abilities too, which are fun.
Speaking of abilities, one thing that, and maybe this has happened throughout the games, but one thing that really bothered me was that in Sun and Moon, my favorite Pokemon was Mimikyu. And in this game, for some reason, they took away his special ability where the first hit, he just kind of, his head goes limp.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I was just like, well, is he even worth it anymore? That was kind of the cool part about him.
Yeah, I think, well, they do that, but then it takes away like 1/8 of his, or 1/16, either 1/16 or 1/8 of his health. I think 1/8.
Oh, maybe. I thought it was gone for good. I didn't use him.
Yeah, so like it's still a thing. I think that's more like balancing for
Right.
in terms of like competitive play, which makes kind of a little bit of sense. And I haven't been really like in the competitive scene. I've like played a little bit on a thing called Pokemon Showdown, which is fun. It's like you can play online for free. Anyway, and like there are some fun like new things you can do with the new Pokemon that are nice, but what surprised me was obviously like everybody knows that they took out a lot of Pokemon. Like you can't bring in a lot of Pokemon, which we can get to that in a sec. But they actually took out a lot of moves too.
Really?
I didn't know that.
You can't do Hidden Power anymore. They don't have Return or like Happiness based moves anymore. They don't. So like, I guess I'm kind of confused because it seems like they took out a lot of that extra coding. Like for Hidden Power, you need a whole lot of coding for every single Pokemon. So it's like if you take out all of that stuff, like wouldn't there be room? To add in some more of like the original.
Okay, LOL. Everybody knows now that the reason why they didn't include all those designs is so that they could make more money on the DLC by including more Pokemon. It's like,
yeah.
I think the real sad thing, and again, to go off of that, the real sad part about this game is it really shows just how Game Freak they don't really care about their fans. They don't. And at this point, it's all money grabby, and the real sad part about Pokemon is if you look at, I mean, the other day I was just kind of looking at some of the original game designs and game ideas and stuff. They really had some ambitious ideas, and while I don't think there's anything wrong with passing the torch to someone else, I just don't see that anymore, except for the designs. Like, and this whole entire game was just boring. Nothing happened. And but every character acted like something happened.
I would say it's definitely like the weakest story. Even compared to like the first Pokemon where at least you have like Team Rocket and like...
Well, even the Ghost Tower stuff was interesting. I mean...
Yeah, and it's like, and it's not fully fleshed out, but it's like, you fight an evil team that like makes sense, and I get what they were trying to do with Team Yell, but like it just doesn't. Like last generation with Sun and Moon, it's like, oh, this was the evil team, and then plot twist, like the evil person that you really need to take down isn't part of the evil team. Like they did that really well last time. So then this time around where it's like, oh, Team Yell is just like supporting this girl. It doesn't feel like it matters.
At least Team Skull made me laugh just how much they were putting their arms in the air. Like, oh my goodness. Like, I think I loved them just because they had such an entertaining personality.
Yeah.
But Team Yell, first of all, I'm frustrated because Team Yell might be the worst name for a team in the first place.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, why wouldn't you call them Team Scream?
That's a localization issue.
Why would you not call them Team Scream? It's a perfect name. And it's like you're just making them fans of this one person. They have no motivation to do anything in this game except support someone.
Yeah, it might have been like better if like they were somehow have some connection to like the craziness at the end, but like it's just like at the 7th gym when you fight the dark type gym leader, it's like, oh, the evil team is actually not evil, and that's the end.
I never even thought they were evil in this game. That's the thing. I mean, at least Team Skull actually seemed like, oh, they might be kind of gang-ish, but
yeah,
Team Yell was just like a bunch of American idiots. Even though it's in Britain, it was like, these are just like a bunch of hardcore fan club people. What's the point?
Yeah, it just felt like there weren't very many, there weren't like stakes to anything. And like in the Pokemon world, like obviously they're like, it's so, like the stories are so thin already that if you take like the little bit of like, you need to like win the league and then also take down this team, like you need to have some reason why you're going and moving forward. And if you take a little bit out of like some of the thinnest story writing in video games in general, it's like if you take even a little bit out, it really disrupts the whole thing. So when you get down to Rose, you know, as the evil guy at the end, it was like, oh, he was just trying to give energy to people. And like there was just there's no stakes when it's like these people that are kind of evil but in the end aren't actually all that evil, and then nothing really matters because you didn't really do anything.
Right.
As much, and I think a good comparison too would just look at Gen 3. Like I think, and Ruby and Sapphire specifically, Emerald is good too, but I think, you know, having a team with misguided ideals, which also was in Sun and Moon, makes an actual compelling bad guy with stakes, because they truly believe what they're doing is good when really it's not, and that's why they're fighting so hard to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why it gets to the point where we can't talk with them. We need to fight them with our Pokemon.
And I feel like this is something that could have been easily solved. Maybe like if you find out right away that like maybe he is evil, but like nobody will believe you because he's like the head of all of this. And like,
oh, sure.
You
like
deception. you and Hop like figure it out, and then you try to tell everybody, but everyone's like, no, they can't be. And then like maybe they discover that you found out their secret plot, so then they send people to like fight you off. Like to me, it's just a really easily done thing where it's like after the first gym or after the second gym, rather than painting them as like good guys, you could paint them as evil guys, and then at the end you could be like, oh, they were really just like trying to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But you thought through the whole way
but
that
misguidedly.
He was evil. Yeah. And that might have made it a little stronger, or like have made a reason for all of this to occur. Whereas like now it's just like, oh, you find out like Dynomax comes from like ancient whatever, and like all these murals, and it's just
whatever.
Well, and you know, funny you mentioned that, because that's when I thought it was gonna get interesting. But I felt
too.
Like I was like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. They're like, oh, they're going back in time. I've been waiting for us to do a back in time Pokemon game. Like think about it. Think about an idea of prehistoric Pokeballs and prehistoric Pokemon kind of being the concept where you could redo your Pokemon in primal states. Think about that for a second.
Like
Think
a
of
primal reversion, but more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that would be actually really interesting, especially since so many of the Pokemon now have dinosaur-like features, or like a Charizard, for example, could have just slightly alterations from the past. Maybe in the past he was also a ground type.
Yeah.
But then he adapted later to only specifically be in fire. I think something like that would actually be an interesting game. But we keep going forward, which again, when you keep going forward the way they do, I feel like they're running out of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you guys, and Eli in Korea, you might have a good idea about this too. When it comes to battling, do you feel like with the Dynomax, did it add anything? Did it subtract anything? Or is it just kind of like, it's there, it's the new gimmicky thing?
I actually was really, really skeptical about Dynomax at the beginning. Like, obvious, like everybody else, right? It was like, oh wow, giant Pokemon, cool. And they didn't even change the designs, which I thought was super lazy. I think they changed the designs of like maybe 10 Pokemon or something.
Now it's up to like 20 or so now. And those special ones like have special moves too, but
I thought actually that the Dynomax thing was kind of cool. I remember being like, this is really gimmicky, and then actually going into a gym battle where the gym leader like pulls out their Dynamax Pokemon and the music just like starts raging. Oh, it's so good. Those were like probably my favorite parts of the game, were the gym battles. I thought they were super really fun.
So I like Dynamax for a couple of reasons. I like the gym battles and that music. I remember you sent me a message, like you sent us a message about it. You're like, this music slaps.
It's so good.
It's so good.
With the fan cheering. Oh my god.
I think Toby Fox did one of the songs.
Yeah. I think he did that one, didn't he? I like the wild area, but I like it best when you're doing the raid battles. Like, I think the raid battles are actually pretty fun. And you get a lot of good stuff from them. You get TMs or TRs. And, like, you get a lot of good, like, loot from them, which is nice. It's kind of like a loot box, but you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah,
Plus, it's actually fun, which is cool. And I would also say, and this is more of the competitive side, but Dynomax is actually really helpful in double battles, and you can like be strategic in a number of ways, because like Max Strike will lower each Pokemon's speed on the other team, or the Max, I forget what the flying type one is, but that'll raise your speed of all the Pokemon on your team. So then you can like get strategic, and you're like, who am I going to Dynamax? Who am I going to Dynamax it with? So that's a cool thing. And like that maybe elevates it a little more than like even Mega Evolution in a way in terms of double battles, just because then it's like a little more strategic. And how you use it. And it's like, you might not even necessarily use Dynamax to like hit an opponent really hard, but you might do it to like give stat boosts or like change the weather or change the terrain.
Or even just like to ride it out if you have like a Pokemon that you need later on, but you know is gonna die in one hit from a move. You can like Dynamax it, and then it'll die in like 2 hits maybe.
In the main story, you really only see it with the gym leaders,
right?
And so it's like,
yeah.
But I would say outside of the main story, it's really good too.
I think part of my problem with the game is that I rely too much on maybe why not call it the campaign? You know what I mean, like the main story. And I was actually pretty excited about the Dynomax stuff. I thought that could have been a cool idea. So I think I was kind of on the hopeful side. And I think what bothered me was, Eli, you're right, in the sense of it was really fun to see, they got their big one out, and the music's going up, that everyone's cheering, it's about to go down. And then one day I'm like, you know what? Let me just try not Dynamaxing my Pokemon that has a type advantage. And they send this huge big wave thing at me. I'm like, oh shoot, they're going to demolish me. And it didn't do anything. And then I hit him with a Razor Leaf. Oh, it destroys this giant monster. No way. Like, that to me is what ruined it. It's like, it's all display at this point. And that's what I was worried about, if I was worried about anything, is like, no, if you're going to do it, and again, I know that maybe there's some advantages to doing it, but not enough to justify it.
One-on-one gym battles, it is definitely more like the spectacle than like the actual difficulty, which is another thing, is like, I'm surprised that Nintendo still hasn't added a hard mode.
Oh my god, for real.
But you could always make trainers be smarter and Pokemon be smarter.
You could add a hard mode where it's like the AI won't do like not very effective moves against you.
They won't
like,
do, Leer every 2 minutes.
They won't do Leer, or like each gym leader will have like an extra Pokemon or two. Where it's like they are like actually focused on type coverage, or I'm the grass type gym leader, so I'm gonna get ready for fire types by having a Lotad. It's like there's really easy ways to implement some of these things that I think they're just not doing, because I feel like, especially since the Let's Go games, it's like they're really tailoring it towards little kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
When a huge portion of their fan base is like over 15.
Well, and I get frustrated about that, because we were their age when the original games came out, and we were just fine. We were able to get through the games. Yeah, there were some parts where we were confused, but we still had fun. We still figured it out. And honestly, we had to like go on. It was a little open worldy when you have to go around and actually talk to everybody in the town to see if they give you something to progress in the story. And
Yeah,
I actually
yeah.
enjoyed that a lot more rather than just you walk into a town, you're forced to talk to someone, and then they give you a map. It's like, well, cool. Like, I mean, all I had to do was press the forward button to get that. And
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that's why my favorite part about Pokemon was always completing the Pokedex, because for a while catching Pokemon was actually kind of a challenge, especially in the early set of games. But in this game, I felt it was a cakewalk, an absolute cakewalk to catch everything.
Yeah, I don't think it was by any means difficult. It was just like time consuming.
I agree. Like you had to either change the weather or you had to like find a location. And while that's fun, that actually is kind of the fun of it. It was just like that was the only part to me that was difficult, especially when quick balls just catch everything.
I hate how slow it is.
It's so slow.
It's so slow. So I was playing like Pokemon Black and White Pokemon Black like a couple weeks ago, and like even with like animations on, it's just so much faster.
Mhm.
And I understand like 3D models and like of everything, it's gonna maybe be a little slower, but it's like I feel like it can be faster than what they're doing. Where it's like maybe between the text and the move, it's like instead of 0.5 seconds, it's 0.25 seconds
Yeah.
or whatever, you know, and it's like there's a way to speed it up without like really overrunning the Switch. Because we
Right.
see like stuff like Breath of the Wild on the Switch.
The Witcher is on the Switch now. They have no excuse.
Yeah, and so it's like I feel like they're purposefully dumbing it down a little bit, which I
Yeah.
don't like.
Yeah.
And if you want to make the battles faster, you can't watch any of the animations.
Right.
Oh my god.
You
Yeah.
know?
Well, and the animations
It's
get old
ridiculous.
when they're the same thing.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
I found a funny video. I don't know who did it, but they're like, "What's the evolved form of Rulu?" Double. They're like, "Double. Use headbutt," and it turns around and kicks the guy because that's its animation.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Used headbutt with its
Yeah,
feet.
yikes.
So I thought that was kind of a funny poke at the game. And again, not
Yeah.
every. There's so many moves. I get it. You can't do an animation for every single one, but when they are the same and you're not adding any new depth to them, just kind of doing a little shake, then speed it up.
It just felt lazy, man. Like all the animations and stuff. It's just like I mean, you look at there's like some side by sides with like the renderings in Sun and Moon, and then the renderings in Sword and Shield, and it's like they're
Mhm.
so similar. It seems like they just copy pasted it.
Yeah, and it sucks because like the frame of the game works so well, right? The new moves, I like the new moves. I like the new Pokemon. I think the mechanics they have are all really good, but when you present it with a really boring, non-engaging story, when you have the gameplay be really slow, when you have a really easy time and you have no option in terms of like making it harder, it's just you kind of I turn to like I've played a lot of fan games because it's like it's more interesting and it's like uses the battle system to its full extent. Whereas like I would say Sun and Moon were actually pretty good, but like I think X and Y and this game, it's just like it felt like it wasn't really used. It wasn't really implemented well.
Pokemon
Yeah.
might be the number one game where you're more likely to have a better time trusting a fan-made game than the actual product game.
Honestly, there's a lot of good ones.
Especially when your after game bad guys have hair that look like a sword and hair that look like a shield, and that was the only thing they could come up with a personality for our bad guys.
Mm.
Oh man,
That was rough stuff.
that was Rockruff.
That was roof.
Oh, Swordbird.
Swordbird. I see what they were trying to do, but like it just did not. It wasn't engaging because then it would be like, oh, you have to take down all these crazy Pokemon that are Dynamaxing in these stadiums, and then you go there and people are like, oh yeah, I took care of it already.
Mm.
It's just like, why did I even fly here then? Anyway, so we're gonna wrap up, but we always end things with a lesson. So, what is a lesson you guys think we could take away from the trials and tribulations of this game?
Okay, I have one. Always say yes to help from your friends. Because I feel like at this point, Game Freak really needs to accept some help from Nintendo in terms of making their games.
Yeah, I would not be mad if it was like, let's move production to, or include a lot of staff from Nintendo, and then the Pokemon Company and Game Freak are in charge of like merchandising and marketing and all that stuff. At this point, they're making the most money off of merchandise anyways, so let's like take the company that's focused on making money in merchandise and put them completely in merchandising, and then put Nintendo workers more in it, because I think it would be a lot better.
Even if you have a reputation of good, of a big franchise, you still shouldn't be afraid to take risks, especially when you have a lot of padding. This game was clearly it was so easy, in my opinion. I mean, not the designs. We already kind of talked about that, but again, let's talk about some of the crazy stuff we saw in the first couple games. Like, not saying it was for adults, but I mean, again, are you going to tell me you guys didn't get creeped out by the Marowak story, or the whole Earth getting flooded, or, you know, or again, just there is no ambition to try to be a little bit edgy, and I think that's what I'm missing personally with Pokemon. And
yeah,
and again, I don't need curse words. I don't need anything. You don't need that to be edgy. You can be. It's all about subtext, and there's none in these new games.
It's something that we also, Travis and I, kind of talked about when we were talking about Danganronpa 3, is like, you need to, like, there needs to be an idea of like forward progression, and it needs to be made with like the ethos of like, we're moving forward, and we're going to be doing things that maybe we haven't done before, but we're gonna like try new ideas. And they did that with the Dynomax, and it worked out really well.
Mm-hmm.
But then you play it safe with the story, and you make the game really slow. You really didn't put a lot of effort or forethought into this, so therefore it kind of didn't work. So it's like, I think you also need, even if you're a Pokemon game or an Uncharted or whatever, there needs to be some kind of vision to what you're doing. And you can tell in a lot of game sequels, and this is one of them, where it's like there's no foresight, there's no vision, there's no real thought. It's just like mechanics that are cool, and that's about it.
Compare Lord of the Rings with The Hobbit when it comes to visuals. For example, the Lord of the Rings, I felt like worked really hard to focus on the story, the characters, and utilized environments that worked for the story. The Hobbit focused hard on green screen, on design, on just the picture,
CGI,
and in my opinion, that became the biggest flaw of those movies was the focus. And again, I will take mediocre graphics and a good story compared to the alternative any day.
Me too. Yeah, style, like substance over style. Well, thank you guys for doing this. This was fun. Thank you everybody for tuning into this episode. We will probably we might talk about DLC. I think I probably would be the only one who would download the DLC. I'm thinking about doing it just for this. So like, we might talk about it.
I gotta say, I'm pretty disappointed that they didn't include those legendary birds in the first one, because they do look freaking awesome. In my opinion.
They do look awesome. I love Zapdos. It looks like a chocobo.
It does. It does look like a chocobo.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Game Detectives Podcast. Oh, and don't forget...
Hey, I know! I'll use my trusty frying pan as a drying pan!
Bye!
Thank you so much for playing my game.